Hi, this is Ernesto Burton, publisher of Military and Aerospace Electronics, and I'm here with our chief editor, John Keller, for this week's Rapid Fire. We have three key stories of the week that John has selected from among the many that are published every day on military and aerospace electronics. And these are stories that John sees as some of the either the most interesting or the most critical on military and aerospace electronics, covering this military electronics market. Hi, John.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It was a little bit of a light week in terms of news. I can feel summer creeping towards us.
It is. It's also a week, though, that I think you mentioned in a meeting we were in earlier together, a week of some significance anniversary-wise. We have a historical date coming up this Friday.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I should probably put together a blog on this, but right now it seems to be a strange convergence of a lot of different kinds of anniversaries in terms of military history. Friday is the 70th anniversary of the D-Day invasions of Normandy. I thought that was interesting, and then I started to think about it, and in August will be the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the First World War, and 150 years ago, the worst fighting in the American Civil War was just starting up with the Wilderness and Spotsylvania campaigns, and which ultimately would lead to the Confederate surrender at Appomattox less than a year away. So a lot of anniversaries, 150th, 100th, and 70th anniversary, and I don't know how often we have this kind of convergence of anniversaries, but there it is.
All right, the stars align this year in terms of military history, and suiting time to comment on it, so shortly after Memorial Day.
Sure.
So, well, let's take a look at the stories we have this week. The first one you identified has to do with Lockheed Martin building space fence radar. What's this story about?
Well, this one kind of took me by surprise. I should have been paying closer attention, but Lockheed Martin just yesterday, just a little less than 24 hours ago, got a contract worth almost $1 billion to build what they call a space fence. What it's going to be is it's going to be a big radar array out in the Pacific on Kwajalein Atoll, and the idea is that they, on fairly fine-grained way, they want to be able to track space junk and orbiting satellites and manned spacecraft, things like that. Evidently, and I haven't seen the movie yet, but I guess the movie Gravity has to do with a fairly serious collision in space, and the threats of these collisions are going up exponentially. And I understand people are saying that there's, in the neighborhood of 500,000 objects in orbit around the Earth. Now, not all of those are satellites. A lot of that ranges from old rocket boosters, chunks of old satellites, a glove that was lost in 1965 during a spacewalk, all kinds of things. Now, you wouldn't think that, a glove floating in space would pose very much of a problem, but the problem is that all these pieces of space junk are moving at about 17,000 miles per hour, and that's a lot of kinetic energy, even if it's something at the size of a matchtip. I understand that something just an inch across could have the kinetic power of a bowling ball going 300 miles per hour. So it's a very serious problem. So this was a big, well-publicized competition between Lockheed Martin and Raytheon. Lockheed Martin ultimately prevailed. Those two companies had been building prototypes, proofs of concept, things like that over the last several years. But Lockheed Martin is going to do it. I guess this space fence radar, I've heard it characterized as working kind of like a flashlight in a darkened room that illuminates all those little tiny pieces of dust that you can see very clearly. And the idea is they want to be able to catalog all the pieces of junk that are orbiting the Earth, and they want to have like a space junk air traffic control system. So if there's a piece of junk headed towards somebody's satellite, they want to give the owners of that satellite ample warning so they can move it out of the way and essentially dodge these pieces of junk. So it's a serious problem, and Lockheed Martin's going to be doing it. I guess they want to have that online by about somewhere around 2018.
You know, two things occur to me about that, and the first one is that would make an interesting job for someone down the road, or a business plan would be a space junk collector.
Well, you know, it's an interesting point, and you know that the notion of cleaning up the space junk has been discussed before, but each country that sends up a satellite, and if it's disabled or whatnot, they still own that satellite. Now, does China want us going up and snatching pieces of their satellites, presumably keeping them? I think they probably wouldn't, any more than we would want China or Russia to be doing the same thing. So there's all kinds of political ramifications there, all kinds of business ramifications, and you know, not even to mention how monumentally expensive it would be to go up and pick up the litter that's going around us in space. I just, you know, in this day and age of, you know, shrinking budgets and things, NASA barely got enough money to keep the lights on. DoD, they've got all kinds of budget crunches. I don't see that designing some sort of an orbiting garbage truck as being very high priority.
Perhaps not, although if the Department of Defense can't do it, maybe Hollywood could. It sounds like a movie treatment. You know, ragtag group of international team of orbiting space junk collectors. Save the world.
I'm sure, but I think, you know, it would take Sir Richard Branson to come up with the dough to fund that.
He could be in it.
Yeah, he could.
Okay, so and really quickly, not to belabor the point, but the second thing that had occurred to me as I was listening to you describe that was the glove. How do you lose a glove on a spacewalk and not have,
you know,
ramifications?
I should have done the research on that. I just saw that in passing. I don't know if it was an extra glove. I don't know if the astronaut who lost it was actually in any kind of danger. I wish I knew the story to that, but unfortunately I don't.
Just like one of the kids who can never come back inside from playing without having lost a mitten.
Well, you know, it surprises me that, you know, they've been able to identify, you know, a lost glove as orbiting the Earth, because I was under the impression, if you've ever tried to, you know, have your children keep track of, you know, pairs of mittens, I was under the impression that, you know, these lost type socks and gloves and things were actually part of the rings around Saturn, but evidently, you know, some of them have made their way back to Earth and are now part of the rings of space junk around Earth.
Exactly. Well, I imagine that one of our listeners can weigh in and tell us more about the glove.
I would hope so.
If you're watching, leave a comment in the comment sections, or write to John, and it might make an interesting blog post down the road.
Yeah, anybody know about that glove? Let me know.
Okay. Our second story, DARPA is getting STOIC, and I don't think this refers to the ancient Greek philosophy.
No, it actually it doesn't. You know, it has to do. What DARPA is trying to do is, people in the military pretty much know that you know, in a serious global conflict, it's extremely unlikely that the global positioning system would be usable. In a relatively benign case, it could be jammed. In a worst case, you could have a nuclear explosion in space that could destroy or cripple all of those satellites. So what DARPA is trying to do is, you know, they're trying to come up with ways of having precise position, navigation, and timing information without the GPS satellites. Now, it's the GPS satellites. They've got very sensitive clocks, and they use radio signal triangulation to provide this very precise positioning, navigation, and timing. But you just in future times of war, you're just not going to be able to count on the GPS satellite. So DARPA is just starting to get this program rolling. They haven't issued an RFP for it yet, but they're going to brief industry later on this month. The program is called the Spatial, Temporal, and Orientation Information in Contested Environments, or STOIC program. I think only DARPA could come up with an acronym like that. But there's several different research programs going on in DoD. DARPA's got a different one called the Aspen program. The idea is they want to be able to carry on sophisticated, high-tech military operations without the global positioning system, and it'll be interesting to see if they can do it. What they want to do is they want to try to see if they can leverage very precise, I think, terrestrial-based reliable radio signals with very precise clocks and things like that, with a lot of digital signal processing, to see if they can get GPS-like position, navigation, and timing capability without those orbiting satellites. Because who knows, if space junk might be taking those out at any moment.
No kidding. Well, it's amazing to think about, not only for the military, but in general, what life would be like without GPS. And then on the flip side, how recently that's become a staple of modern life. But I, for one, have a hard time thinking about going through a day without using it for something.
Well, I don't know. We would all have to go back to Walmart and get our trusty Rand McNally road atlases. But when everybody's got a GPS in one of these, and I don't think you can escape it anymore. It's just so much a part of modern life. But when you think about it, and it's kind of scary, it really wouldn't take much to bring down all or some of those satellites. All it takes is a nuclear explosion in space. Iran pretty soon is going to have nuclear capability. North Korea has nuclear capability. China, Russia, us, India, Israel. There's a lot of threat out there, and the GPS is tremendously vulnerable. That's why we have things like the STOIC and the Aspen programs.
Yeah. Well, and as I continue to tell my kids, it's worth learning how to use a compass.
It certainly is, a compass and a map.
Yep. So our last story today is Northrop Grumman offering MMIC broadband ultra-low noise amplifiers for commercial use. So this is a story that moves into the commercial space. What's going on?
Well, it's interesting. What really caught my attention there is Northrop Grumman in Redondo Beach, California, and their chip fab capability there. They're going to make monolithic microwave integrated circuit technology, as they have been for many years. But they're going to make these devices available to the commercial businesses. What's interesting about this is the pedigree that Northrop Grumman facility in Redondo Beach has. Before Northrop Grumman acquired it, this was TRW, and TRW was instrumental in the MMIC and I believe also the VISIC programs back in the 80s. So these were pioneering programs to develop digital, high-level integration of digital circuits, and also a very large-scale integration of RF and microwave circuits, as MMICs are. So there's a long legacy there. It's been a lot of government funding, and very high-quality stuff has come out of that lab. I mean, I grew up in Southern California, and I think I first toured some of the labs there at what was then TRW, now Northrop Grumman, back in 1967, when I was an 8-year-old Cub Scout. But it's terrific technology. There's been a lot of radiation-hardened technology of the highest quality coming out of there, and now commercial businesses are going to be able to get their hands on some of that stuff. And I'm sure it's not going to come cheap, but for the high-quality applications, it'll be interesting to see what kind of capability this will transfer to the commercial market.
Fascinating. Well, thank you, John, and thank you all for watching. This has been Rapid Fire for June 3rd, 2014. You can read all of these stories as well as others that John has posted this week at militaryaerospace.com. And thank you for watching.